One of the neat side effects of the Star Citizen implementation of salvage is that the Drake Vulture, as the smallest salvage ship, is also capable of salvaging the largest of wrecks. With enough patience and a cargo ship alongside to pick up the goodies, it can mean that the humble Vulture can rack up some nice returns. I'm Forrester, and this video takes on one of the biggest salvage contracts available to strip and scrap a Hammerhead Corvette with the humble Vulture. Whilst the actual session was almost 2.5 hours end to end, some of the footage has been sped up as to bring this video to a more digestible length. The parts that have been sped up are clearly marked as so. So strap in, grab your salvage and cargo ships, and let's get started. And as I've heard, the first part of this involves taking the contract for the Aegis Hammerhead, in this case at Mike L2. That's not too far away from where I am at Mike L1, but will add a little bit of travel time. Then, through the magic of sped up footage, we'll set our respawn point, which is required when we're spawning in a Vulture and a cargo ship, and we'll make sure to store all of our personal belongings. I'm going to start by heading out in the M2 Hercules, so set a route for Mike L2, head out of the hangar bay, enter into quantum travel, all at ×12 speed. Once we get to Microtech, because Mike L2 is on the opposite side as Mike L1, just had to hop around the planet itself before heading into the salvage claim. And then shortly thereafter arriving at the salvage claim to scrap the Hammerhead. So the purpose of bringing the M2 here is obviously to load up the recycled materials, the scrap, but also to be able to lift all of those weapons off the Hammerhead. So before we head back to pick up the Vulture, I'm just going to position the M2 so that the cargo bay is in a decent place to receive those weapons. And I think we can get a little bit closer. So you've seen I've sped up a lot of the footage. I'll speed up some more on the way in with the Vulture. This setup phase is about 25 minutes because this Hammerhead is so far away from my usual base. There we go. Oh, sorry, door. So quick backspace to send us back to the Mike L1 medical facility, where I can respawn and bring across the Vulture. So it's not lost on me that this isn't going to be a forever option. Once the death of a spaceman mechanics are in play, I'll have to be more creative about getting from A to B, with perhaps a ship to get back to C again. But for now, this is a reasonable way to do it. I guess with a larger cargo ship like the M2, it could be possible to load up something on board, like an M50 or something like that. So you take an M50 in an M2, take the M2 to the scrap, then fly out from the M50, leave the M2 next to it, fly back to a base, and then pick up the Vulture. I think that would work, but for now, the backspace is the easy option. So heading back to the salvage claim now with the Vulture. So from here, the first step is going to be to strip off all the weapons. So I've parked the Vulture off to one side where it's not going to get in the way. And the Hammerhead obviously has a lot of weapons. There are 4 turrets from the sides. There's a turret on the top and a turret on the bottom. So that's 6 turrets. And each of those turrets is armed with 4 weapons. So you can do the maths. 6 times 4. It's a lot of weapons to carry off. Feels as though I'm missing something from this multi-tool. And that'll be the tractor beam attachment. There we go. So for these weapons, when you grab hold of it with a tractor beam, there'll be a small arrow on the screen, and that just indicates which direction you need to move the weapon to be able to take it off of the mount. So just follow the arrow basically. And then to rotate, hold R and then move your mouse in the direction that you want to rotate, and that will move things around. So because the M2 is a large cargo bay, what I will do is have kind of the weapons either at the back or across onto the sides. But for now, I just want to get them all aboard. Once they're all aboard, I can start juggling them around. By having the stuff at the back and at the sides, it frees up the cargo grid for me to have the boxes of either cargo from the Hammerhead itself or the RMC scrap. Just makes that easier. Decided that actually I'll start putting these things at the back, because with 20 plus Rhino repeater size 4 weapons, things are going to be bouncing around and I don't really fancy being hit by that. So I'll speed up the rest of this footage of just moving the weapons on board. So this is a little bit tedious, I suppose, but the weapons are fairly valuable. So each of these size 4 repeaters is about 3,000 credits. So 24 times 3,000 is, what, 72,000 credits for unloading all of these? And it takes about 25 minutes of actual real time. This is obviously sped up quite considerably, but this was about 25 minutes to strip all of these weapons off, load them in the back. Oh, and the cargo from the cargo bay as well. Now, obviously, if you've got a second person, this could be a much more efficient process, but you also have to factor in that you'll be, well, I hope you might be sharing those profits. So, all the weapons in cargo loaded aboard. It's now back to the Vulture. And we'll start salvaging. I commented on my last salvaging video about the challenges I have with using the gimbals. A lot of you said press G, hold G. Try that. Doesn't work for me, I'm afraid. So I did read the comments. I did try. It isn't working. I think I have narrowed down what it is. It's because I've had to unbind some things on the mouse to try and get some cinematic camera shots, and so I think because I have those unbound, even when I'm in the gimbal mode, it doesn't work. But I don't mind using the fixed hull for this. It is very satisfying to see that little glow as the salvage beam munches away on that delicious hammerhead hull. And of course, I want to get every single little bit. Too obsessive to leave little bits of salvage hanging. Once again, try and break the beam just before the cargo gets full, so that that last little bit that's being processed / server lag fills up the box, and then continue away. And this is, for me, this is the new mining. It's a lot more. Mining was always a relaxed gameplay loop. I've always enjoyed mining, but it's actually a little bit more intense, I think, than the salvaging. The salvage is a lot more sit back, point, click, hover. Don't need to worry about charging, overcharging, rocks exploding. All you do, you salvage away, and once you're full, you move your boxes. That's it. Now that's not for everybody. For those who like the action-packed, highly involved sequences, then there are other gameplay loops for that, but I don't know, if you just want to do something while you're listening to a podcast or watching something on the other screen, salvage is a pretty good way to go. And there we are, the second box is almost full, which means that the filler station is obstructed, so I'll hop out the chair and start playing Stack the Boxes at the back. There we are. So hop back into the front seat of the Vulture. So at this point it's just rinse and repeat for the rest of the ship. So I'll speed up the footage so that you can see kind of in fast speed, but without having to watch the full salvage. The actual salvaging took just over an hour, so to completely salvage the entire hull was about an hour's worth of time. So it was about 20-25 minutes to load the weapons and cargo, and then another hour to grab all of the boxes of scrap off the hull and move them to the Hercules. Incidentally, the Hammerhead is, of the two big ships that form the salvage contracts, I define those as the Hammerhead and the Starfarer. The Hammerhead is one of the easier ones to actually do the hull scraping for. You might tell me it's not hull scraping. At this point here, I'm just going to load up some of the cargo, checking that I wasn't parked too close. But the Hammerhead is quite linear in its layout, whereas the Starfarer is quite complicated, and it's very easy to get in and around the Hammerhead versus the Starfarer. You're worried about like have I missed a bit. The Hammerhead's pretty simple. So we go to this bit here, and I'll just put these boxes on the cargo grid. And as the Vulture is getting full, this stage is necessary. It's also helpful because it means that you know that all of your eggs are in one basket, so if you need to get out or escape or there's a server crash, you know that the one ship is the one that you need. Now I know some people like to have a completely full Vulture. For me, I usually just fill up the cargo grid on the Vulture and then move things along. That way things aren't floating around or flying around, or... And usually by then I'm ready for a little bit of a change of pace anyway. And this is where the piece that I was talking about having the weapons on the sides and the back and then freeing up the cargo grid for loading the boxes, it just makes sense. Because I've got this entire unimpeded area at the front of the M2 that I can just use to stack boxes clumsily, as you can see. Really want to fill that gap. I should have never created a gap. There we go. And it really doesn't matter. The M2 has got so much storage aboard that, like, I could have just put these on another part of the grid, but no, I wanted them all neatly lined up. Of course I did. So I appreciate some people will find this a little bit too tedious. That's fair enough, that's fine, nothing wrong with that view. I actually quite enjoy this. It's, you know, it's lower pace, it's a little bit more relaxing than some of the other loops, so I don't mind stacking boxes. If I'm ever aboard a reclaimer, I'm quite happy to be the person who stacks the boxes. That's fine. So back to full speed and back to salvaging the hull. And full speed in that regard is times 12, as you can see on the lower left. And salvaging the ship makes me remember how much I enjoy the Hammerhead. When you've got it fully crewed, it's a really fun platform. I feel like it's a little bit too weak to fighters at the moment, given that it is an anti-fighter platform. But still, really fun to be in one of those guns or flying the ship around and seeing all those guns firing off. Do like the Hammerhead. Amazing how in times 12 speed the Vulture fills up so quickly as well with all of that delicious hull. Now I find that the thrusters on the Hammerhead are a little bit awkward to load up. I can see here just getting some more boxes onto the M2. But yeah, the 4 thrusters at the back of the Hammerhead I find are a little bit awkward for salvage. You'll have to let me know in the video comments if you've got any suggestions for getting materials off those. At the moment I just write them off because they're just too awkward. I appreciate that's potentially some profit there, so if you have any suggestions or top tips around those engine nacelles at the back of the Hammerhead, I'd love to read about it. I think at this point it's looking like the last few boxes anyway. Once you get to this stage where you're really kind of going for scraps, that's usually the time when I think, do you know what, we'll call that quits. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 boxes in the Vulture. We did 2 drop-offs, so that's 2 times 12 boxes in the back. So I think that's 29 boxes of scrap from that Hammerhead. Which is okay. I feel like it's not as much as you get from a Starfarer. I think the Starfarer gets more. I'm misaligned here, aren't I? I'm going to get pushed down. Never mind. Yeah, I do feel like the Starfarer gets more, but then you get all the weapons as well from the Hammerhead, which is a nice bit of extra. So I'm going to hop back aboard the Vulture, just move things around, orient things a little better. And there's your external view of what's going on. I really like there's a lot of talk about the things that we're missing from the game at the moment, or things that are delayed, or things that have taken a long time. But sometimes, like especially those that have been backing for a long time and remember the days when it was, or even before the hangar module, but then just the hangar module, being able to like fly a ship, look in another ship, and see, you know, cargo in there or people moving around, and you know, that's pretty cool. Being here in a position where you can just take boxes from one ship and load them up on another ship. I don't know how technically challenging that is, but in the overall journey of Star Citizen, to be at this point, that's not a bad place to be. And as for what happens for that poor Vulture, it just gets left there. Because the Vulture's got a fairly quick claim timer, I don't need to do anything with it. I'll just, when I get back to the station, I'll file a claim again. Top tip on the M2, there's a little ladder here, which is often quicker to go up the ladder than to go up the elevator. So, if you're just going from the lower deck to the upper deck, oh dear, lower deck to the upper deck, I usually take the ladder. Or vice versa, I'm just going from the upper deck to the lower deck, you can just take the ladder as well. Although I think the elevator usually like defaults to the upper deck, so I think it'd be quite rare that you need to go down and the elevator isn't there, but anyway. Ladders, ladders, ladders. So at this point we'll head back to Microtech to sell up. Microtech is a good place to sell up. It's kind of central to where I've been operating, so started at Mykel 1, ended up at Mykel 2. Microtech is right in the middle, so not too far to go, but also it's got everything that you'd need to sell at, so you can sell the weapons at Center Mass, and then the scrap at the, I don't know what you call it, the commodities exchange, the trading area. TDD, that's the words I'm looking for. And then speed up the quantum travel to 12 speed. That said, the quantum drive on the M2 is pretty good. I've kept the stock quantum drive on here. It's certainly not slow. You get a decent range out of the Hercules as well, into the gargantuan quantum fuel tanks. And then head back down to New Babbage. And New Babbage at night time. So, insofar as top tips for navigating at nighttime go, New Babbage isn't the worst place to figure out what's where, but it's not the easiest either in the dark, is scanning pings can really help you find out where to go. And for this, because I'm parking by the kind of lake at the entrance to the commons, there are usually other people parked here, and so you just follow the blob of sensor contacts. So that's quite an easy way. If you're not going into the spaceport to land, if you just go into the commons, like for this to sell up, follow the trail of where everybody else is. Otherwise, the spaceport is across from the frozen lake. It's got some red lights on it, so red lights to spot the spaceport. And some people also suggest that if you go into external view, there's something that happens that changes like the brightness or the gamma or something in the background. So sometimes if you're in external view, you get a better view of everything that's around you, and that can make it easier to spot out the spaceports. I'm Pharisto, and this has been your lesson on navigating the spaceports of Stanton at night. That would probably be a really useful video actually, because some of them are quite hard to spot. So for exiting the ship, I do call the elevator rather than use the ladder and the ramps. That's because, well, firstly, the ramps take a little bit of time to deploy, so you've got a bit of a wait time there attached. But also, in this sort of a situation, leaving the ramps down could mean that people could hop aboard. And I'd rather other people were not hopping aboard right now. And the snowy trudge into the commons. I really like how different people in the game use different ships. So like walking past a Constellation here, I've not flown a Constellation for some time. It is a really good, balanced, mid-sized ship. I really like it, but I tend to, if I need something for the cargo space, I tend to just fly out my M2. If I need something for the weapons, then I tend to fly and trigger people with the Ares Inferno. So I just haven't got a lot of need for it because I've got alternative ships that fill that role. But I like that about the game, that everybody's got their own preferences, their own leanings, and that just creates variety. So at this point of going to sell up, the whole end to end from starting out at Michael 1, bringing everything, well, bringing both the ships across to the Hammerhead to salvage, stripping the weapons, stripping the hull, heading back here. That was 2 hours and 20 minutes for a session. So quite a long session. It would have been a lot shorter if the Hammerhead had been at Michael 1, the station where originally it was at, but sadly it wasn't, so that's fine. But not a short session for salvaging a Hammerhead or a Starfarer. So step 1, sell the weapons. Each of the weapons is size 4, it's worth about 3,000. You'll get variants within that depending on how many have been sold. So starting there, the first was 3,060, the next is going to be 3,057. That will kind of chip away as we sell more of these 24 weapons. That will carry on selling. And this is why it is, I think, worth picking up the weapons, because there are so many of them, especially if you are more efficient with a tractor beam than I am, because that's 72k just from the weapons on the Hammerhead. And given that the contract to take the salvage rights was 50k, just the weapons in themselves have funded that contract essentially. Now, I will be interested in the comments. Is there a faster way to do this other than hit the sell or the quick sell? I don't know what I've paused as if somebody's going to respond to me. I can't read the response in real time, so I will be reading the responses afterwards. So if there's a quicker way to sell all, I will be very interested to find out more. Interesting as well, like I do read a lot of the comments on these gameplay videos, and I do find it quite interesting to hear people's thoughts. I honestly expected more views on things like ship reviews and location spotlights, but many of you are saying actually you quite enjoy just watching the game being played and kind of a bit of narration on the side. So if that's you, feel free to let me know that in the comments as well, because I always find that interesting to read what the different things you're enjoying watching on the channel are. And then here we are, TDD to sell up the cargo itself. Got 1 unit of Quantanium, which is another 25k. Oh, and then I've got this bug about vehicle occupied, so quickly stored the vehicle and then sell from storage. So 25k for Quantanium. There are some other goods on board that I will not be selling. Then 223k from the RMC, which is about 250k from the cargo, plus the 75k from the weapons, minus the 50k for salvage. So overall that's about 275k profit. So hopefully you enjoyed that one. If you did, please press that like button. Otherwise, I hope you'll hear from me on the next. Thank you for watching.